Let's go ahead and just get started. Again, very excited to be joined by many families tonight. We have representation, I believe, from up to 13 different countries, according to the RSVPs. And I know many of them are making sacrifices on getting up early or staying up late, so I really do appreciate it. And again, I will be following up with a recording of this to everyone that RSVP'd here. But in our discussion today about developing an A-plus game plan to help your student athlete be discovered, I'm going to give a general overview of college athletic opportunities that are out there in the United States. I know that there are many opportunities outside the United States, but that's a whole completely different webinar. I'm going to briefly touch about the differences between regular recruitment and highly selective athletic recruitment, aka the Ivy League. I'm going to touch on a little bit there. We've had recent changes to the NCAA, so certainly I'm going to highlight the most recent changes. There are still changes that are probably going to be made here in the next few weeks or months. So everything that I'm saying here today is subject to a little bit to change, but I'm pretty confident what I'm bringing you today is the most up to date. I'm going to talk about the NCAA transfer portal and its impact recently on the college athletic recruitment landscape. Going to talk a little bit about athletic scholarships, myths versus realities, and transition a little bit over to a little bit more around how does a student athlete know if they are being recruited? Touch a little bit about college visits, unofficial and official, and give some tips on being your own agent. And where a lot of this is in general going to be applicable to many different types of sports, because I have a relationship with Future Champions Golf where many of you are on because you're a member of Future Championship Golf. I have some recruiting tips from an NCAA coach specific to men's and women's golf that I'm going to highlight at the end and provide a way for you to get some additional resources here. But I'm just going to go and get started here. I'm just going to talk a little briefly about myself here. I have an extensive background not only in college athletic administration, but also college admissions and high school counseling. It really dates back to almost 15 years with me being a coach and me serving as an assistant athletic director. I did coach basketball for many years. Also, for 9 years, I was a college admissions counselor in California for two institutions. So I really got a good in-depth background on what holistic college admissions is, what that process is, what colleges do look for in their applicants. And I have also, and I'm currently serving as a college admissions counselor and a life planner at a private independent school in California named Vistamar School. In 2022, I was at a different school, and out of our 30 graduates, over two-thirds of them actually went on to play their desired sport at the NCAA 1 through 3 level. So I'm very, very familiar on that recruitment process for aspiring college-bound student athletes. I take my professional development very seriously. I'm attending conferences. I'm on the board of a few organizations to really stay up to date, not only with NCAA and the recruitment and athletic process, but also the college admissions process, which is very, very important as well, because a majority of aspiring college-bound student athletes do have to apply and be admitted into the college that they want to go to. So I'm very confident in that realm. And, I do have a nonprofit called the Paratum Scholars that we are bringing this information to, but I also do work one-on-one with families who are interested in helping make their aspirations and dreams of playing their sport in college become a reality. And I'll touch base on how you might be able to connect with me later about that. Let's get started. An overview of college athletic opportunities that are out there. I'm not going to read this word for word because you're going to get the actual recording. You'll be able to see these differences between the divisions here. But most people think of NCAA Division One as the only opportunity that's out there. In fact, there are many opportunities, and you will definitely find out there's actually more opportunities when you factor in Division Three when you compare Division One and Division Two. And sometimes that can actually be more attainable for high school athletes. But we associate NCAA with college athletics because the Division One has the most funding. You see most of their athletic contests on TV. You tend to see these are larger institutions in regards to their size, and a majority of their athletes do receive some sort of athletics aid. In fact, let's debunk the myth here. NCAA Division One and Two, and sometimes in the NAIA, you do have some athletic scholarship offerings that are be awarded. There's no athletic scholarships awarded in NCAA Division Three. Another reputable and not up and coming, but just getting a little bit more limelight now is actually junior college, playing athletics in junior college and then transferring in and then potentially joining a team at the NCAA Division 1 through 3 level as well. And it is definitely important, I think, to stay engaged in a sport or activities you love. So, for most, the dream of playing this sport or the reality of playing your sport will end at the end of high school. And so I do want to point out there are competitive intramural leagues, competitive clubs at colleges as well. In fact, over 4.2 million participants each year on a variety of sports are in that level. So I can, highly encourage students to, balance that side of being a student athlete and try to play their sport as long as possible. I want to just focus on just the main requirements to be eligible to play in Division One. And the reason why I focus on Division One because if you meet these requirements for Division One, you will meet the Division Two, Division Three, and NAIA requirements as well. You have to graduate from high school. These may seem very, very basic, but you do have to graduate from high school. Your athletic talent alone will not just get you into college to play. You actually have to graduate from high school. You also have to register for the NCAA eligibility office. There are a couple of different options that I highlight in my resource guide you can do that with, but a couple things are important, especially for international aspiring college-bound student athletes. Even if you're applying and playing at a Division three level, you have to get an amateurism certificate. To play at the Division one or Division two level, you have to be certified with the NCAA. And so I really do recommend between ninth and 10th grade for that process to happen. And we'll talk about how that impacts college visits in a moment. And again, this may be seen obvious, but even though you might be recruited by a college coach, you still have to be admitted into the college. Even if you're offered a spot on a team, you still have to go through the admissions process. The baseline eligibility for Division One is a 2.3 GPA, which is very, very attainable. Many people are like, really? That's the baseline? And yes, that's for overall Division One athletics. One thing I'll point out, if right around the start of the pandemic, they did take away the scores requirement for the SAT, ACT, but I'm going to talk about in the highly selective admissions process where those might come into play. So currently, at this time, there is no SAT or ACT scores required to be eligible for the NCAA. I feel if you're looking for some general framework on what classes do I need to take just to be eligible for the NCAA, the 4x4 method is one to easily follow. You want to take 4 English courses, 4 math, 4 science, and 4 social science courses in your high school career. So 16 total courses. This is just to be NCAA eligible. Keep in mind your high school or particular colleges might have different requirements for their own institution. And the way that this kind of compiles up in the high school process is you do need to have at least when you begin the seventh semester, the beginning of the senior year, you need to meet 10 of those 16 requirements to be eligible here. So, in most situations, whether you're going to school in California or abroad, many students, just for the sure fact of going through their high school curriculum, they are going to be NCAA eligible. So, I just want to give you some of the basics. The key thing here is there could be some significant differences around certain colleges on what they require and based on what your high school graduation requirements are. And I see that a lot in regards to foreign language. Some schools in California, the public schools, they only require a minimum of 2 foreign language requirements, where I do see some Division one, two, or three schools, especially selective schools, that they might require three, or they might highly recommend three or four to be competitive for admission. The NCAA has a great directory of where all of the schools are, but I do want to let you know that there are such things as sports deserts, meaning there are certain areas of the country that may not have all divisions. So if you go up to the NCAA directory, you can filter by division. You can also, filter a little bit more by sports and other things as well, public, private, states. But as you can see, for those that are tuning in from California or maybe the Rocky Mountains, or perhaps you're international and you're like, I just want to go to school and play on the coast. If you're looking at Division three, which has a lot more opportunities for college-bound student athletes. As you can see, there is this big desert in the Rocky Mountains to Midwest, where a majority of the schools are pretty much Chicago based east, going a little bit to the Southwest. So I do want to let you know as we go along, you want to try to have options. So if you're going in and you really want to play your sport, having as many options as possible is going to be key. And you may not want to have a lot of parameters around, I'm only going to look at California, Florida, and Massachusetts. You might find some options there, but you keep in mind you have to also have interest on the other side as well. So just to let you know, the NCAA membership directory is really good at just giving you a visual snapshot. And keep in mind, you might just need to have a little bit more openness if you want to continue your sport. As I mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit about highly selective athletic recruitment. So here, this, when you think about it, you think about the highly ranked schools, the NCAA, or excuse me, the U.S. News and World Report top 100 schools. These are schools that might have a selectivity rate that are 25% and below. The Ivy League, Stanford, U Chicago, you name it. They're obviously gonna go beyond the NCAA recruitment minimums to actually see if you are going to be eligible for their university. So sometimes before a actual offer of admission or even a written agreement is made, there are certain things that happen beforehand, specifically the junior year. They are looking for highly academically prepared students that are far beyond the NCAA eligibility requirements. Many times that student athlete is kind of being noticed and they might have an interaction with a college coach at a selective school. They might ask for a copy of your transcript through the end of the junior year, highlighting your junior year grades. They might ask to see your senior year schedule. They might ask for this because they want to do a pre-read process to see how selective, how competitive you might be for their selective admissions process. And sometimes they might ask for a writing sample. Keep in mind that not all schools are going to ask for this. These are for very highly selective schools. One thing that is great about highly selective schools, not all, but many of them can offer need-based financial aid opportunities for low-income, college-bound aspiring student athletes. Very rarely are they offering athletic scholarships. In fact, the Ivy League, it very much boasts the fact that they don't offer any athletic scholarships. And this is where I do want to highlight, especially the Ivy Leagues, as many student athletes I have conversations with in the past, they could perhaps see their athletic talent being a plus level for Ivy League plus schools. So I do think, even though the NCAA does not require ACT scores or SAT scores, I'm just focusing on SAT here. I do think it's important to know that you really need to be within this range to even be considered academically as a college-bound student athlete to these schools. You could be the best golfer, but if you really want to go to Cornell and you are constantly putting up a 1250 SAT and you have a 3.2 GPA, most likely you're not going to be admitted because you have to be able to be admitted to the university as well as be talented enough and recognized for that talent by the coaches to be even have a shot to play on the team. I want to highlight some recent changes to the NCAA. In the past, there had been some differences between equivalency versus a scholarship sport, meaning there were certain sports at the NCAA, specifically Division One and Two, that were known for giving some full ride scholarships for their athletes. And then there was another group of equivalency sports that were given a essentially a budget to offer like partial scholarships. So in the past, men's football, men's and women's basketball, gymnastics for women, and volleyball for women were allotted a certain amount of full ride scholarships. Because of recent settlements of NCAA lawsuits against the NCAA and a current settlement that's happening in the federal government right now, the NCAA has been proactive to actually make everything a equivalency sport and excuse me, essentially eliminating equivalency and making sure that anyone could receive partial scholarships. So let me say that again. All sports are going to be classified as equivalency sports. However, there isn't going to be a scholarship cap. In the past, certain sports had certain caps of scholarships that they couldn't exceed. That, according to the NCAA right now, is gone. But there is a current settlement happening between judges in the NCAA on being able to enact this agreement here. So, all in all, I just want to let you know this. There's been many misconceptions in the past that if I am being recruited, I'm going to get a full ride scholarship. Even with these recent changes here, even though that colleges can offer and there won't be a scholarship cap, and they can offer partial scholarships all the way throughout, or even full ride scholarships. It all depends on the budget of the actual institution and how much money the school deems that it might want to actually provide that sport. So keep in mind that this is subject to change. There has been some pushback regarding roster limits for existing student athletes because they are in fear of their sport being cut to save money for more revenue-driven sports, which typically is has been men's and women's basketball and football programs. So this is subject to change, and I think it probably will over the summer. One of the reasons why athletics has changed recently has been the NCAA transfer portal that has been enacted over the past few years. Let me explain what this is. In the past, if a student athlete committed to a school and it wasn't the right fit and they wanted to leave, they had to actually request a transfer and sit out and lose a year of eligibility before they could move on to the other school. The transfer portal now is a really great tool that gives student athletes the power to quickly transfer, demonstrate interest in other programs. I think it is could be for many different reasons. Sometimes it could be for maybe the wrong academic fit, but a lot of times it might be for the connection between the student athlete and the coach, and maybe a lack of playing time. Um, but the thing that's important here is that the administrative red tape is cut in that you could transfer after 1 year and be on another roster the next year. But what has that done? It has essentially led to recruitment happening 365 days a year, 24/7. The roster spots have the competition for these spots have certainly increased over the years, and in many regard, it has actually led to fewer spots sometimes for rising high school graduates. Because if you're a college coach and you have some pressure on your from your athletic director to win immediately, sometimes you might want to look to the transfer portal for um, seasoned, proven players at the NCAA level, plus have been able to show that they could handle the academics of college and focus on bringing them in for a roster spot rather than looking at high school athletes. This happens at all levels, but predominantly at the Division I level for sure. Some coaches might look at high school athletes as perhaps a little bit of a gamble, a little bit of a wild card, especially in regards to athletics and how that happens. And you see it a lot on team sports. On you're able to kind of see how they mesh and intertwine at the NCAA level. For individual sports, I do feel it could be a little bit more transparent, but I just want to let you know that this is happening, and especially in the fact that this is an additional um, protocol that the coaches have to look at and follow, especially when you might be trying to reach out to gain interest in your own potential opportunity to play for their team. I mentioned earlier that there's changes around equivalency versus headcount sports and athletic scholarships, but I do want to present some data just to kind of let you know how difficult it can be to actually play at the highest level. Overall, there are so many student athletes that are playing in high school, but only 2% of them are actually going to earn some sort of athletic scholarship to play at the NCAA Division I, II, or NAIA level, and only 5.6% of college athletes will actually even earn a full ride scholarship. So predominantly this has been in football, men's and women's basketball, women's gymnastics, and women's volleyball. For full ride, you really have to be that blue chip athlete to get full tuition, room and board. And now this presentation won't cover the name, image, likeness element to college athletics, but really you're only talking about a small portion of athletes. But you can kind of look at the data out there. You can see how difficult it is to play. Right now, we're looking at male high school athletes playing in college. And specifically for golf, we're only looking at 6.5% are actually going on to play in college, and even less than 5% are playing at Division One. And for female high school athletes, you can see numbers in certain sports a little bit higher, but focusing on our golf community today, we're still looking at 6% overall playing at Division One through three, and in between a little over 2% playing at Division One. Okay, so I gave you a lot of information very quickly. I want to let you know, take a quick pause right now, that I am going to have a resource guide at the end that you can scan the QR code and access a lot of this information. You're going to have links to webinars, resources, so you don't need to memorize this. You'll have the recording here. But I do want to kind of transition to kind of understanding different signs of if a student athlete is being recruited. So I always like to start on you're not being recruited if you are just receiving general information from admissions offices at colleges to your home, to your email box. Many times these are being prompted because you clicked a box prior to taking a PSAT that you agreed to share your information to your email address. There are a lot of different marketing employees out there. You might be getting general information because you attended a college fair and shared your information. Just because a college coach sees your profile on a recruiting website does not mean automatically you're being recruited. Also, if you happen to notice a college coach in the stands or on the course that sees you and they have their college logo on their polo shirt, they might be there watching just general, but that doesn't automatically mean you're being recruited automatically. But there is a transition to starting to be noticed for a college-bound student athlete. If you are being proactively sent an recruiting questionnaire from a college coach, perhaps they were connected to you by a recruiting website, then if they request and reach out to you via email to ask you to fill out a general recruiting questionnaire, this is a good sign that you're starting to be noticed by this college. If you play for your high school team and the high school coach receives an inquiry from a college coach, that's actually a good sign that they're paying attention to you. If you receive an actual individual email or letter from a coach during appropriate times, that's a good indication that at least following your high school journey, your athletic journey, and that's kind of a good sign of the fact that, hey, you might need to nurture that relationship. But going to the next level, you are going to be considered actively recruited if you actually get a college coach to give you a telephone call expressing interest. There are ways for them to get this information if you reached out earlier with your athletic resume and you do have a mobile phone, then you actually will, they can, during appropriate times, reach out and actually get a call from you. If they reach out to you by phone, that's a good sign you're being actively recruited. If your college coach reaches out and comes and attends one of your matches or games, and they tell you beforehand they're coming specifically to see you play, that's a really good sign that you are being actively recruited. And if you have been invited for an official visit for at the college or university, that is a really good sign that you're being actively recruited. While we're talking about visits, let me go over the difference between official versus unofficial visits. An unofficial visit is any visit that you make on your own dime, on your own schedule to go visit the actual college campus. I do recommend if you try to do this, to certainly reach out to the athletic department to see if you might be able to look at the facilities, maybe to meet current players. Keep in mind, this is your own. You're being proactive on your own to reach out to this college. They are not reaching out to you for an unofficial visit. Uh, I do recommend in general to go visit colleges often because you certainly are going to want to understand what type of academic fit campus is going to be right for you. Is it a big, medium, or small school? Is it a small liberal arts campus that's a little bit more rural or suburban or an urban environment? So you get a good feel of what feels right for you because that's important as well by doing unofficial visits. But any sort of tour or connection or conversations with the college athletic department or current students are going to have to be initiated on your own, and this is all going to be on your own expense. And you can have unlimited number of unofficial visits. There's nothing by the NCAA that says you can only have certain amount of visits. Official visits. So official visits are you only get one official visit per campus, and that's through Division 1 through 3 level. You are the one big thing regarding this is you have to be registered for Division 1, Division 2 schools. You have to be registered with the NCAA eligibility office before you can take the official visit. So this is why I think it's important that you do that between your ninth and 10th grade year. So just a little bit more parameters around the official visits here. You can begin these official visits August 1st before your junior year for Division 1 schools. Division 2, you get again unlimited amount of visits, but you can only do one per campus. That's important to notate that. But for Division 2, you can begin these June 15th after your sophomore year and unlimited amount of visits for Division 3 beginning January 1st of your junior year. Okay. I do want to hammer this point home. We talked about the small percentage of high school athletes that get athletic scholarship, a very small percentage that get full ride scholarship. This really does mean that a majority of aspiring college-bound student athletes, they really need to take their recruitment journey into their own hands and become their own agents. So here's some general tips on how this can happen. You need to keep a wide list. I talk about the directory and where all the schools are located. Have broad parameters of what you may want out of your college experience, specifically around geography and maybe around size too. Initially, have a big list and reach out and make contact. There is a great link in my resource guide that gives you access to a template for you to make a copy on Google Sheets and download to keep yourself organized. You know, Initial emails need to be personalized. Even though you might have a template email that you send out, it really needs to be personalized for each school. And you should include a resume, a cover letter. If you have a highlight video and links or more, it really needs to be personalized. I would not highly discourage you from just BCCing all these college coaches in one and make it very impersonal. It does take time. It does require you to be organized. So I do believe, even though that there's a lot of debate about youth, social media, phones, I get it. My current school, we're actually about to implement a cell phone free school next year for many reasons. With the recruitment process, I do feel that college coaches are living on social media. They certainly do like getting these emails because they'd like to see the athletic resume. They'd like to see the quick links when they're in their office, but you can utilize social media, especially X and Instagram, wisely to actually highlight your great games, your matches, a great swing. Keep tagging coaches, maybe following certain schools. It could be used for your advantage. That's another way that you need to be proactive and think about if they're for the parents in the room, how comfortable you're going to be with your son or daughter being active on social media for recruitment. I highly recommend possibly keeping a separate account for recruitment purposes and one for personal. And I'll highlight on some etiquette on social media later on. The third bullet point is so important. College coaches, they want to hear from the student athlete. Parents, I'm a parent of two girls, one that just turned 12, one's really getting into track and field, long jump. We're going to see where that might go. I just want her to be happy and enjoy it. However, if it turns out that she does want to play and she has the talent to play at the next level, it should not be me reaching out to college coaches to let them know of my daughter. They don't want to hear from college coaches or counselors or parents unless they specifically want to hear from you. This needs to be self-driven by the student athlete. And high school coaches are there to advocate. They're not going to be the drivers as well for that process. So it's very, very important, especially there's ways to utilize a reference from a high school or club coach on the athletic resume, but just don't count that your college or your high school or club coaches are going to do this process for you. After you make initial contact, you need to track the responses and non-responses equally of the emails you sent. Keep in mind, This may be a very tedious process for a young adult to do, to reach out to a decision maker, a coach. What if I mess up in my email, my spelling? That's why it's important to take your time and stay organized. But guess what? You could reach out via email and they may not respond. You could send another email 10 days later. They may not respond. You may have to send 3 or 4 emails before getting a response back. And there's many different factors that might go into it. It could be that you reached out during the middle of their season. It could mean that you reached out and they, maybe with the transfer portal, they've been busy recruiting because they lost a couple players to the transfer portal. So keep in mind, don't give up after one, but track all of the responses and non-responses, especially on that resource document that I have. You do want to fill out athletic questionnaires and profiles for any college that you reached out to, and especially if they reached out with a request for you to fill that out. You do want to build your online presence. There are recruiting websites out there, but again, one thing about recruiting websites is they offer a lot of great general resources too, and a platform that you can pay for to highlight yourself there. It may not be as necessary as you think to invest in one of these things. And especially, coaches do not want to hear from recruiting websites reaching out on the behalf of the student athlete. It needs to come from the student. When it comes to social media here, it is important that you certainly be proud of your accomplishments, but you don't want to be a braggadocio. You want to be humble. You can certainly follow coaches and like them. When it comes to your highlight video, make it easy and accessible for them to access a 90 to 120-second clip of some of your highlights. You need to be constantly updating that throughout the season or, every 2 to 3 months. And you want to certainly stay in contact with coaches who have started to notice you, have reached out to you. It's okay after finishing a tournament that you send an update on how you did. Use the existing email that they responded to so they have a documented history of the communication. But it is okay, even if they reach out and they say, "Hey, I'm interested in learning more. Send me your link to your highlight video. Let's stay in touch." Make sure you do stay in touch. And another thing is, if you are initially getting some notices from coaches, it may be upon you to visit the campuses and reach out and let them know you're coming. Maybe you want to go walk around and attend a match that they're playing locally. I think it's important that you meet and kind of see the culture of the actual team that potentially might be recruiting you, and maybe you're also looking to see if you would be a good fit as well. For certain sports, they offer ID camps. I do think that those come sometimes with a cost, sometimes comes with travel. I don't, want you to necessarily turn down ID camps based on perhaps the name brand according to your knowledge of the actual school that might be hosting this. But I do think it is another opportunity for you to actually be exposed to. You see this a lot more in team sports too, but it's important to whoever's hosting that ID camp to send a thank you note or an email afterwards. It just gives you an opportunity to be noticed. Um, One important thing at the end I think is so, so important. Again, your job is to connect with the coaches, to hopefully get noticed where you're going to be actively recruited. Keep in mind, you still need to apply. And part of applying is that your high school counselor is going to be needed to stay in the loop. You might need to send SAT scores or maybe that transcript earlier on. You're not going to have access to that initially. So, keep in mind, many of these high school counselors do actually take off during the summer. So you need to build a good relationship with your high school counselor to actually help in this process. They do play a role and they are very, very useful. In general, what are college coaches looking for? This is just in general. They're always looking for you to give your best, the effort you're giving in, day out. That's just not only on the course, on the field, that's also in the classroom. They want to have someone who's just going to grind it out, and they don't want you just there in the best of times, but you're going to have to really embrace the grind. There's going to be many highs and lows with a potential collegiate athletic career. So mental toughness, which is obviously very, very important in golf. The fourth one here, a supportive but not pushy family. Again, we talked about not having parents reaching out on behalf of yourself, but especially if a parent notices a college coach at an athletic contest, you know, definitely be supportive of your son or daughter. Don't cross any bounds that don't cross any boundaries. You want to really showcase that you're there to support your student athlete because they're going to be the one that are going to be going to college, and they don't really like when you have pushy families or needy families because they feel that's going to happen over 4 years. They want to see coachability, positive attitude. They want to see a sense of maturity, which I understand is developing over the course of the high school age student. Uh, Social media, we mentioned it a couple times before here, but it is so important because there has been many instances where certain athletic offers have been rescinded because of information that has been divulged via social media. And sometimes this isn't necessarily something that maybe a student athlete posts themselves, but maybe they were tagged in by a friend. So in general, I think before you kind of get going in this process, it's really good to just Google your name, find out what's already out there. Um, for social media, as I mentioned, it can be useful in this process. Certainly, keep your social media posts classy. Don't come down derogatory on, even if it's non-athletic related, or perhaps you're coming off blaming the weather for the course and its conditions, and you just want to remain positive, classy. Keep in mind they're seeing everything. There are many ways social media can work for you here. It's a great opportunity to post your academic and athletic accomplishments. You can certainly tag coaches that might be noticing you in there, or just because or you're trying to reach out and maybe be noticed by them. It's just a great way to build a positive online presence. So if your family has imposed restrictions on social media, I certainly understand you have to go by what your parents will allow you to do. It is, I don't want to say it's an advantage. It's just an additional avenue to connect with coaches. And it is a platform that they are on. But just, I do highly recommend that you do keep a separate athletic profile for both Facebook, Instagram, X as well, just so you can kind of keep that organized. And, but I do want to let you know they will be looking. They will be looking. So keep in mind it could work for or against you. Okay, I'm going to grab some water real quick. And I want to kind of end before Q&A. And if you do have them, feel free to start putting them in the chat. But I think it's important to, I reached out to an NCAA college coach. His name is Jaime Zentua. He's both the heads and men and women's golf coach at the University of Redlands. And a little bit about Redlands is it's a small liberal arts college. It's about 60 miles outside of Los Angeles. So it is considered, somewhat a selective school. It does have a fairly high GPA for accepted students. They do a really good job on, since they are Division III, they can't offer athletic scholarship, but they really do a great job at providing need and also kind of merit aid admissions aid to make the cost pretty affordable. And over the past few years, they've been really successful both in their men's and women's program. Currently, oddly enough, they're both ranked 13th as of May 29th. So I asked five general questions. Can you give me, Jaime, your tips on a variety of different things? So I'm not going to read word for word here, but the first conversation was about communications and email. So even at the Division III level, he is receiving thousands of emails from potential recruit. So he really valued being truthful and brief, in that if you have all of these messages here, it's going to be very easy to highlight everything in here. You're going to have an athletic resume and a clip, a YouTube clip highlighting your swing in any of your matches. So keep in mind, be very cognizant of the time of the coaches here. The resume specifically for golfers, they need to list all your tournaments. So this is the one area I say it's okay if you played a lot of tournaments to have like a two-page resume, because you might have a lot of athletic contests to list there. All the parameters here regarding what he is looking for. He is looking at the dates you played, the field size, the yardage. He is looking for a lot of information that can give a quick snapshot of, that tournament and how you did. He really wants you to post good and bad rounds. It does, might even emphasize a better round after a batter. If you had a bad round and you follow up a couple rounds later with a very fantastic tournament, it just really highlights your mental toughness. Um, and it's very, very important that you continue to keep your consistent communication. So, tips on swing videos here. The videos he wants you to go to the driving range, and he does not want to see videos that go beyond 2 minutes. He's not giving more than 2 minutes there. That you should show your shots that down the line and up front and to the face. He would like to kind of see the ball go in the air. So keep in mind, do you need to hire a professional videographer? Absolutely not. With this little device I have in my hand, and most likely you have it too, you can actually film this, but you might want to maybe invest in a tripod that can help with your swing video. You want to go down the bag with your clubs. Uh, you can certainly add montage highlights from actual tournaments, but sometimes he feels that some of those videos might be far away, so it might be hard for him to view that. So, scores, what are you looking for? No, that's what ultimately it's going to come down to. Sometimes with individual sports that are focused more on times or scores, it's sometimes easy based on certain tournaments and courses to look at scores to see, could this individual cut it in this division? And he just wants to highlight the Division Three is, you might think it be inferior to Division One and Two, but he says it's legit, and I know for sure it is legit. They are looking at no worse than a 75 for really to gain the attention of a high-end Division Three school like the University of Redlands. Um, Other factors he's looking for are attitude, teamwork, coachability. If you're kind of scoring higher than 75, doesn't mean you can't play in college golf, but you might just need to look at a different tier. I mentioned that Redlands is currently number 13 for both men's and women's. Maybe you need to look at the official rankings and look down a little bit if you're reaching out and you're noticing that, hey, my scores are not quite cutting it to existing teams and players that are shooting at these colleges. You just might need to look at a different tier. So make sure you keep your options broad and wide. Social media, just like what I was highlighting earlier, you want to be smart. Uh, Especially if a coaches follow you, just go into the expectation that coaches are going to follow you because they will if they are noticing you. You need to follow the program on social media, and you can learn a lot about the culture of the actual team from following some of the social media posts. Again, remain positive. Don't be foolish or vulgar. It's a really good place, like I mentioned, to understand if that perhaps culture of the school or the team is a good fit for your own personal wants and interests before even taking a visit. It certainly is something if you're taking an unofficial or official visit, you need to understand and be active on their social media page. And he really just wanted to talk about the fit of an actual college. It's especially at the Division Three. I think that I'm very confident this expands to all Division Three, and I even want to say that for all NCAA athletics and NAIA schools, it's not about playing your sport in college. It is about competing at that high level, sure, but you're also having the opportunity to continue your academics pursuits. So don't just attend a school because they're an athletic fit. You have to make sure that you're going to be engaged academically as well. You want to make sure that these schools have the major or perhaps majors, if you're deciding between a couple, that you are interested in studying in school. Because if they don't, and you just take another major just to fill that requirement, you're not going to be that engaged because there's so much time you'll be at that school that you are not playing golf or your sport, and you're going to be a student. You're also going to want to know if you like the region, like the students. You're going to be involved in many different non-academic activities that engage the whole campus. So it's very important you have not only an academic and athletic, but also a social and financial fit too. Um, and you certainly should, if you're being actively recruited, you need to visit these campuses to get a good idea if that fit is right. Okay, I'm at the end. I got a very general guidance. I am right around that 45, 48 minute mark. So I did leave some time for some questions, but I just want to let you know that, this is a lot of broad general knowledge that, plus with the resource guide, that many of you might be able to take. And I hope that's the case to take into your own lives and utilize to hopefully get your name out there and to be actively noticed, recruited, become your own agent. I have for many years worked one-on-one with families, with Zoom and just the technology that we have from around the world in this process here. So I want to let you know if this is of interest, that you feel like you could use a little extra guidance, feel free to reach out to me. This is my email address. I do have opportunities for a virtual exploratory meeting, but also if you're going to the Callaway World Championship event with Future Championship Golf, I'm going to be there at the welcome event and actually presenting a parent session the next day. So even if you're going to be there and you want to meet in person, we can have time for a 20 to 30-minute exploratory meeting in person as well. And as promised, I did present the QR code to download the resource guide. What I'm going to do, if you're to download this resource guide here, there's a webinar that I've done in the past because of the changes here. If you were to download that webinar, it would be somewhat similar, but I'm going to change it on there once I get the recording so you have this recording as that reference guide as well. But there's a lot of other great stuff. Some of it I covered, other stuff regarding college admissions that are in there that is there. Again, I want to just provide value to hopefully you'll be able to take this and, catapult your son or daughter, if you're a parent here or if you're an athlete, catapult your athletic and admissions journey, hopefully in a way that will achieve the dreams that you want. But that's all I have for you here. This is how you can reach me. I have one question I see in the chat. Let me read it. Is there any advice for a senior this fall who is quickly improving and starting to show better results in tournaments, but has been slow to the process to reach out to the schools, but is starting now? So the best thing to do is to develop that athletic resume. Again, playing golf, they want to see all the tournaments you played and the parameters that I mentioned earlier, and what Jaime also mentioned. You certainly want to have a organized way to reach out to actual coaches to make sure that you know when you reached out and when you might need to follow up. But I do think it's important to kind of understand, obviously for Division 3 at the level of the Redlands coach, who's really within the top 15, he's looking at 75s and below. But that doesn't mean if you're over that, that playing collegiate golf may be out of the question for you. So if you're not at that level yet, maybe it's going to the actual rankings and looking at colleges that perhaps aren't as highly ranked as Redlands. Maybe they're at the mid 50 level and just beginning to reach out. And you might need to spend a couple hours on this process. The one thing I will say for a senior is you also need to start talking about what other options, if playing collegiate golf is not going to happen, what are other academic schools that you want to reach out to as well and consider for the process. I feel that in this process here, if you have a middle school or an early high school student in between ninth and 10th grade is the ideal time to start. If you are a senior, it's not too late. However, you're just going to have to juggle a lot more balls more quickly in that you're going to be essentially 6 months from now applying to colleges. You will probably be done by that time. You're going to have to do a lot of research on the academic front on that side, but also a lot of work on reaching out to get noticed while continuing to get better at golf, while traveling, traveling tournaments. So it just means a lot more work in a short amount of time, but I have seen it done. And not to give up. Don't send one email. They didn't email me back. They don't want me. They're getting thousands of emails every year. You need to be proactive. So that is the best thing. Making sure you have that 2-minute swing video on the range is going to be very, very important. Yeah. So hopefully, kind of answered your question. Does anyone else have any other questions that I can answer for you? Okay. Well, you have my email address. I'm going to send the recording to everyone that RSVP'd, so no worry on that. You had the resource guide here. Again, if you do have interest in speaking to me one-on-one about what it is like to work with someone like myself, and if for some reason it may not be a good fit, there's others people I could recommend as well. I'd be more than happy to have that conversation. But I do want to thank everyone for being on here. I hope you have a great rest of your day, evening, depending on where you're coming in from. And if you're going to be at the Callaway World Championship event in July, I hope we'll meet in person. And yeah, from there, thank you very much. Have a great night, and you'll hear from me soon. Take care.